At the next point in the DiamondCutterSutra, the Buddha talks about Lung Temba. Okay. Say Lung Temba. Lung Temba. It's also called Lung Du Temba. Lung means the word. We had it in Lungicha, right? And Tokpecha, we had Lungicha. Temba means to give the word. And this is I don't know what you want to call it in English, but it's where the Buddha comes up to you, you know, and he puts his hand on your head and he says, I foresee. Lung Temba means to predict or to give the prediction. I foresee that now, because of the stage you have reached at this point, you will become Buddha named such and such within so many lives. Okay. It's a big threshold for a Buddhist, right? And in the sutra, the Buddha is describing an event of Lung Temba. He starts talking about an event when a Lung Temba happened. The Lung Tenbi, the person who got the Lung Ten was named, say Churkitin. Churkitin. Ch means Dharma, Ti means of, and Tin means cloud, cloud of Dharma. Okay, Churkitin. And this was a youth. It's called Shunu Churkitin. So it was a young man at that time. The Buddha who was doing the prediction, say Marmenze. Marmenze. Marmain means like a butter lamp. Mar means butter, May means lamp, and it's like one of those offering lamps. Zay means maker, the maker of a butter lamp. In Sanskrit it's called Dipamkara. Dipamkara. This is also a name of Atisha. Lord Atisha was called Dipamkara also, but this is not referring to Dipamkara. This is referring to a Buddha who came before our Buddha, and his name was Dipamkara. So in the DiamondCutterSutra, the Buddha is describing to Subhuti an event where a Buddha named Churkitin, a young man named Churkitin, got that prediction from a Buddha named Marmenze. And that because he had reached a certain level called the 8th Bodhisattva Bhumi, okay, Sagyepa, because he had reached the 8th level, the 8th Bodhisattva level, because of that, Churkitin had reached that, then Marmenze, Dipamkara, that Buddha came and said, okay, I'm going to tell you the future. You know, after so many lives, you will become a Buddha on a certain planet, and your name will be Shakyamuni. All right? Your name, you will become a Buddha, you will be on a planet called Earth, and your name will be Shakyamuni. So this is actually referring to the Buddha, our Buddha. Okay, the Buddha in our world. And he got that prediction because he had reached level number 8. And there's a particular state of mind at that level that I want to talk about today. Okay. Say Mikyewe Chula Supa. Mikyewe Chula Supa. Kyewa means grow. Mi means what? Won't grow. Okay. Mikyewa means won't grow. Chur means generally any kind of thing. Dharma, chur means dharma, but it means any kind of existing thing. So Mikyewe chur means something that's not going to grow in the future. Okay. In the monastery, people have all these philosophical terms, and they use them as secret code when they're in a restaurant or something, you know. Like if the waiter is slow in Mysore, you say, oh, this dinner is really a Mikirwe Chu, you know. This is a future dharma that won't occur. Okay? That's called a Mikirwe Chu. Chila Supa. Supa generally means patience, in the sense of the ability to not get angry or to not get upset. That's Supa. And when you're talking about what we've been talking about for the last 3-4 days, when you're talking about achieving all these high levels of realization, Supa takes on a completely different meaning, and it means mastery. Okay? Mastery, total mastery over something. So this spiritual level called Mikirwe Chula Supa has two flavors to it. Two things are going on. Something's not going to grow anymore, and you have a total mastery over something. There's two elements here, Mikirwe Chu and Supa. And that happens at the 8th Bodhisattva Bhumi, the 8th Bodhisattva level. How do you get to the 1st Bodhisattva level? Nah, that's the first path. Huh? Yeah, when you see emptiness directly with bodhicitta, you reach, in other words, you reach the path of seeing, path number 3. You become an Arya. You see emptiness directly. And if you have bodhicitta in your heart at that moment, by the way, is it directly present in your mind? Is it manifest in your mind at that moment? Can't be. Okay? It's in your, we say it imbues your mind, but you cannot be thinking, I want to save all living beings, because living beings are not ultimate reality. The only thing that can present itself to your mind at that moment is ultimate reality, emptiness. Okay? But you do have bodhicitta, we call it simba, imbued. Your mind is soaked in bodhicitta. Okay? So if you see emptiness directly, with bodhicitta in your mind, soaking your mind, not manifest in your mind, you reach 1st Bodhisattva Bhumi. At the same time that you reach the 3rd path on the Bodhisattva track, okay, the path of seeing. Okay, that's all those things happen at the same time. So you can imagine that reaching level number 8 is a long trip. Okay, Bodhisattva level number 8. Number 10 is like enlightenment. All right, but we're talking about number 8. Number 8 is where you reach Mikirwe Chula Supa. So Mikirwe Chu, what do you think is the thing that won't grow anymore? Mental afflictions, okay? Reaching level 8 on the Bodhisattva track and getting to Nirvana on the Bodhisattva track are the same thing. Okay? At level 8 you reach Nirvana. Okay? You still have 2 levels more to go before you reach total enlightenment, Buddha paradise. Okay? And all those bodies that we talked about. Okay? So at this point, you've only reached Nirvana. Nirvana is defined as what? Permanent elimination of mental afflictions due to? Huh? Yeah, seeing the 4 truths one by one after seeing emptiness directly. Having that whole day's experience that we described after seeing emptiness directly. Sosor tokpe gokpa. Sosor tangok it's called. Sosor tangok means you got rid of something because of something else. There's 2 kinds of cessations generally. I mean, you don't have to go into it much, but Sosor tangok means you got to a cessation because you saw emptiness directly and then saw those 4 truths one by one and all those things that were in those 4 truths. There are cessations that you reach that don't depend on seeing emptiness directly. And they're called Sosor tang mingi gopa, which means they don't depend on that process of seeing those 4. An example would be, at a certain point in the path of preparation, due to the goodness of understanding emptiness intellectually, you can no longer take birth in the lower realms. Impossible. Totally impossible. Can't happen after that. Path of preparation. At a certain point, I think it's Jolam Supa, which means mastery, and it's the name of your root lama. Probably mastery and patience, right? You can no longer be born in the lower realms. Impossible. That's a gok. That's a gokpa. That's a cessation. That's the end of something. But it didn't come about through seeing emptiness directly and seeing the Four Noble Truths one by one. So we call it Sosota Mingi Gopa, which means a cessation that doesn't depend on that. There's two kinds of cessations. So we're talking now about the eighth Bodhisattva level. The person has, for this person, mental afflictions are Mikewechu, which means what? They're not going to happen again. Okay? The point is that they can't happen again. You cannot have another case of a mental affliction. And I thought it would be cool to go over the mental afflictions, just so you could enjoy what you're not going to have. All right? So I'm going to go over the mental afflictions just very briefly. I mean, if you're having a whole course about wiping these things out of your mind, out of your heart, it'd be nice to know exactly what you're getting rid of. There are 6 major mental afflictions. We talked about it last Friday night. There are 6 major mental afflictions. And there are 20 minor mental afflictions, secondary. And there's tens of thousands of variants. Tens of thousands of different flavors. It's worse than Baskin Robbins. Thousands and thousands of different flavors of mental afflictions. But mainly six principal ones, 20 secondary ones. What's the difference between a major mental affliction and a minor mental affliction? Rang dembe kanzaki semju godumene mashiwa chepe semchu is the definition of a root mental affliction. It's a kind of thought that once it occurs in the mind of the person that it's attacking, disturbs their peace of mind in a major way. That's major mental affliction. It ruins your peace of mind in many ways, in a major way. So, for example, if you had one of these 6 occur in your mind, it would mess up your day, your whole day. All right, and it would become obsessed. I mean, it would hurt you. It would ruin your peace of mind substantially. Like maybe for an hour or 2 hours, you would be, your mind wouldn't be at peace. And that's the definition of a mental affliction. The definition of a mental affliction is Rang Dembe Kazaki Semju Mashiwa Chepa. It messes up the peace of mind of the person who has it. Okay. So what would the opposite be? I mean, if you didn't have them, you'd always have peace of mind. It's very interesting. Okay. You would always have peace of mind. Conversely, if you're not feeling very good at any particular time, you know, if you're feeling upset or stressed or irritated or what's happening, you must have a mental affliction. Okay? It's a sign. If you don't feel whole, if you don't feel at peace, if you don't feel contented at any given moment, there must be a mental affliction running in your mind. Okay? Major or minor. Minor is the definition of a secondary mental affliction is that it ruins your peace of mind from a specific angle. Okay? For example, jealousy is a secondary. Jealousy makes your heart feel bad from a very specific angle, which is you find it distasteful that someone else should have something good happen to them. Okay? Definition of jealousy, you know. It bothers you that someone else could have something good happen to them. And bodhicitta is like praying that everyone could get everything they ever wished for. So the minute you have jealousy, then forget bodhicitta. You know, it's impossible. Jealousy is like, I wish this person wouldn't have got this nice thing happen to them. And bodhicitta is, I'm going to work my whole life so that everyone gets everything they ever wished for. It's totally opposite. But anyway, minor mental afflictions, secondary ones, they ruin your contentment or your peace of mind from a very specific angle. We don't have time to go over all 26. I'm going to go over the 6 main ones. Yeah. I'm going to do all 6. And I'm doing them from the point of view of Mikyewe Chu, okay? From a rather optimistic point of view, okay? These are the guys that you are going to kick out of your mind permanently when you see emptiness directly, because you had a good class about DiamondCutterSutra, okay? So these are going to be the friends who move out of your house. Say Dirchat. Dirchat. Dirchat means desire. They say desire. It's supposed to be like the worst mental affliction. You know, anger you get once a week or once every, depends on what your problems are. By the way, if you're in this realm, if you're sitting at Vajrapani Institute, and if you're not disguised, if you're not a tantric deity in disguise, okay, which I don't know. I tell you I'm not, but I don't know about you guys. And if you haven't achieved, well, even if you have achieved nirvana in this life, the reason you're here is because you have these. The best person in the desire realm and the worst person in the desire realm are about an inch apart. Okay, I mean, we all have these 6. All over the world, no matter what language you speak, no matter what country you live in, what you eat for dinner, what your face looks like. If you're in the desire realm, you got here because you have them. And that's another thing you understand at the path of seeing, in the Jetopyeshi, in the aftermath. You understand that there really are 3 realms, and you understand that if you're here, and if you're in a body like this, which is much worse than it looks, okay? If you're in a dead-end body like this, which can only die and hurt you, it's because you have mental afflictions. And that's what got you here. Okay? If you're a human, you were very, very virtuous. But you still had mental afflictions. If you were pure on the inside, the outside wouldn't look like this. Okay? And if your outside looks like this, or anything close, you have mental afflictions. And you're here because of that. The evidence is that you're here. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have them. Okay? So the first one is Dirchat. I want to read you the technical definition of Dirchat, okay? It says, Sakche ki ngurpo la yuon du nang ne ranto ki mendawa dupe semjung semba. Sakche ki ngurpo la means it must be directed at a samsaric object. And that's important. That's very important. Like, is it a mental affliction to desire nirvana, or to desire to get out of this state, or to desire to be like Lama Yeshe, or something like that? You know, is that a mental affliction? No. Sakchekin Lopala, which means it has to be focused on a samsaric object, on a dirty object, on a suffering object. Okay? Like, you know, everyone saying how nice you are because you're teaching this class, you know, and you get attached to that. That's Dirchat, okay? That's desire. That kind of desire is towards a dirty object, samsaric object, getting well known, okay? Yuondu nangne. Yuondu nangne means that samsaric object must be appearing to you as if it were attractive, okay? As if it were something nice. They call it Sitte Punso, Jetson Kappa. It means it has to be something that seems good in samsara. And the word seem is obviously very important, okay? At some times your body seems pretty cool. You know, sometimes your life seems pretty cool. Sometimes promotion would seem nice. A raise or a bonus would seem very nice. I haven't seen them for a long time. These are yuondu nawa. These are things that look as if they were nice, or like a good dinner. But we know that good dinner is the scriptural example of suffering number 2, okay? Because you always get hungry after that. And hungry is part of the good dinner. Getting hungry is part of the good dinner. If you could cut the good dinner off at dessert, right after the coffee, before the bill, then it would be, you know, that would be happiness. But the tail of the dog There's always this tail attached to the dog. And that's that you got to pay the bill and you got to get hungry again. And that is attached to every dinner that you can ever have. That makes the dinner suffering. Buddhists are very careful they don't cut the dinner off at the coffee and the dessert. They say getting hungry is a necessary part of the dinner, so therefore the dinner is lousy. Okay? If you have to get hungry again, then the dinner is lousy. Okay, so 2 parts of desire so far. It has to be focused on a samsaric object, and that object has to appear nice to you. Ram Tonki Mindrawa de Besemba Semjung Semba, which means in and of it, well, by itself, which is a long story, I won't talk about that, but you get this desire not to lose the object. That's the 3rd component. You start to have a feeling that you don't want to lose this thing. Mindrawa Dilpa means you don't want to be separated or to lose this object. So those are the 3 things you need for desire. The object has to be samsaric. Secondly, it has to look nice to you. Look is very important, right? And then thirdly, you have to not want to lose it. It's only this kind of emotion that would make you do something wrong not to lose it. And that's the problem with desire. Okay? The problem with desire is that the next step in the food chain is that it triggers some kind of activity or thoughts that are not wholesome. You undertake some activity of mind, speech, or body to keep the thing, to keep yourself from losing the thing, and that's why desire gets you in trouble. Okay. And there's a whole chain there, which I'm not going to do it in this course, but it's really, really cool about how ignorance triggers all these steps, ending in you say something bad to the boss, okay. Or you're chasing after something that you desire. Okay, definition number 2. Oh, so by the way, this mental affliction is supposed to be in your mind all the time. I don't like to call it desire very much. I mean, okay, call it desire, but when you think about this mental affliction, it's what you call liking something. It's more prevalent than desire. Desire to me means, watching an X-rated movie in a hotel room at 3 o'clock, or something, then I get desire or something. But this is happening in your mind constantly. As you sit in this class, for the length of this class, this mental affliction will occur maybe 200 times or something. I want to get in the shade. I want the class to end a little sooner today. I want to have a good lunch. You're going to have all of those objects they fit the bill. They're samsaric objects. They seem like they'd be nice, and you don't want to lose them. Yeah. They do have to ruin your whole day. Let's say altogether they ruin your whole day. Yeah. Say again? Oh, I'm talking about the desire to get out of the class. Generally, if you're having the right... Is a class samsara? Is a Buddhist book samsara? There's a big debate about it. Sakche lamgid. Sakme lamgid demadan duma chinam sunyante. Lama tope duchinam sakche. All changing things are samsaric, except for the past. All changing things. That's the opening lines of the DiamondCutterSutra. All changing things are samsaric except for the past. Are the books the past? By the way, past means sopa. Past means realization in the mind of a person. In the mind of a person. That's the definition of past. And then they discuss the books and they decide, well, we'll call them Lamgid Jedang, which means ancillary past. Okay? Auxiliary past. We'll count them in the past. Technically speaking, they're almost samsara. Second one is, but what I wanted to say was, this is more prevalent than you think. It's not desire in the sense of having a big desire, Mac attack, you know. It's going on in your mind constantly, and it's making you unhappy from moment to moment, hour to hour, month to month. It's what makes you feel restless, or that you can't quite be fulfilled, or you can't be contented. This is disharmony. Okay. And by the way, the point of the class is that you cannot remove that by any other means than seeing emptiness directly. Okay. Say control. Control. People translate it as anger, but listen to the definition. Shisumbo kaya ruwa la nga toki misope sempi sembo, which means Shisumbo, I haven't been able to find in the scriptures. I take it to mean the three components that we talked about of an action, like the doer, the object, and the action itself. But it has a lot of different meanings in scripture, and I haven't been able to satisfy myself. I believe it means the elements of any situation. Let's call it any situation. Okay. Kaya ruwala means towards any of those. Ramtoki, of its own power. Misupe semtu, can no longer stand it. A state of mind where you can no longer stand any particular part of a situation. Okay. Sometimes they say jawandupa, which means the desire to get separated from that object. Okay, the desire to get away from that object, samsaric object. Okay. I shouldn't say that. That's a little tricky. Let's say the desire to get away from any particular object or part of a situation because you can't stand it anymore. You don't like it. Okay. That's control. So it's a lot more subtle than anger, I think. I think it's like disliking things. This is something that's running in your mind all day long. I don't like this bug is buzzing in my ear. You know, I just had a control, okay, and like that. Okay. I'm going to get more into this later, but what's wrong with that? I mean, when I get mad at the bug and I go like that, you know, what's the problem? It's ignorant action. That mental affliction is triggering an ignorant action. How do I get rid of, if I don't like bugs, how should I get rid of bugs? Take care of them. Yeah, take care of them. I mean, when my Lama, we had roaches in our house. And when he wanted to get rid of them, you know, you have a choice. You can squash them, or he would put out food for them, let them have a nice dinner, and then catch them in glasses and take them outside. And if you've ever lived in New York or New Jersey, I mean, this can be a long process. And he did it for like 3 or 4 years. And he just carefully took them one by one outside for 3 or 4 years. And then they just have totally disappeared. They have not come back. They have not appeared. They're gone. That's the difference between doing it with a mental affliction, which would be crushing them, because that's stupid. According to the laws of karma, which are allowed to work because of emptiness, they'll just come back worse. He would go a long way and put them. We have like a. He was worried in the winter that they would be cold, so we have a compost heap, and he put it way away from the house and put them in the compost heap. They wouldn't freeze in the cold weather. They don't do too well in the snow. Yeah. I was going to bring it up later today, in fact later in this class, but just to anticipate, the act of patience, of not getting, excuse my language, pissed off, is can be practiced towards animate or inanimate objects. Okay. In other words, if you get angry waiting for a bus because it doesn't show up, which happens a lot in where I live, you have created a bad karma, and you have broken the perfection of patience. Okay. Or if you, the example in Scripture is stubbing your toe on a rock and cursing the rock. Okay? It doesn't hurt the rock, but you've broken the perfection of patience, which means not getting angry. Nga means me. Gel means king. What's nga gel? Pride, okay? Nga gel is pride. There are 9 flavors of it. I won't go into it, but you should study it someday. Yeah, number 3 is nga gel. Pride. Okay. I'll read you the definition. It's very interesting. A state of mind in which you take on the aspect of haughtiness or arrogance, due to the power of grasping to self-existence. Of something about you. Okay. Like your looks or your strength or your intelligence or something like that. But what's interesting is that the definition has to include this deludedness about your self-existence. And we're going to talk more about it in the second half of the class after the break. But start to get in your mind this very, very, very important key. You know, this very trick about emptiness. You could not have pride if you did not have the tendency to grasp the things as self-existent. If you weren't believing in a thing that doesn't exist anyway, gakcha, you couldn't have pride in your mind. What's that? That's the whole point. You include it because to show that. Oh, this is to teach students who didn't figure that out yet. Okay. In other words, if you weren't grasping to something about yourself as self-existent, you could not entertain the mental affliction called pride. It would be impossible. There ain't room in this town for both of us. You know? And we talked about it before. You cannot be understanding the emptiness of something clearly and also entertain a mental affliction at the same time. It's impossible. What's the converse of that? If you're having a mental affliction, you must be grasping to something as self-existent. It's very interesting, okay? If your mind is not, and by the way, having mental affliction means not having your mind at peace. If your mind is not at peace, if you are not contented, if you don't feel fulfilled, if you're nervous, irritated, stressed out, slightly longing for things, restless, channel surfing in life, you must be having a mental affliction. And if you're having a mental affliction, you must be holding something as self-existent. So how to cut it all off is getting obvious. You know, where to shut off the pipe is obvious. It's that dependent origination link number 1. So those Boston people know that one. The Marikpa, the blind guy, okay? Ignorance. Okay? That's why it's link number 1 on that wheel of life, which surrounds the suffering. Okay. That's link number 1. Okay, number 4. Which, by the way, means if you want to see how your emptiness understanding is going, go to the person who pushes your buttons and see if it still works. You know, say Marikpa. Marikpa. Marikpa means ignorance. Ignorance. And very importantly is to understand what the Abhidharma says. If you use an example, there's a metaphor. Knowledge is a friend. Knowledge is a friend. Then Marikpa, says the Abhidharma, is not simply the absence of the friend, it's the enemy. What that means? What it means is, ignorance doesn't mean that you just don't know about it. It means that you are actively misknowing it. Okay? So ignorance is a little tricky, you know. When you say ignorance is bliss or ignorance is no excuse in the law, they mean you just didn't know about it. That ain't what it means in Buddhism. Buddhism means you are actually actively, strongly holding the thing the opposite way. It's not that you just don't know about self-existence. You are strongly grasping to the opposite. I'm sorry, that things are self-existent. Yeah. Not kind of like that. But what it means is, maybe it should be called misunderstanding. Say tetsom. Tetsom. Tetsom means doubt. Okay. And in the same breath, you have to say, the Buddha warned his students, meaning us too, that you must doubt Buddhism. You must be critical. You must doubt every single aspect. Don't believe what anybody says, doesn't matter who it is, when they get up and talk about Buddhism. You must examine it yourself. It must check out with your own mind. You have to be able to confirm it, or you shouldn't accept it. He's very adamant about it. If you accept even the smallest detail, just because you like the teacher, or you don't have time to think much about it, or for any other reason, especially because you're attracted to the physical appearance of the teacher or to the personality of the teacher or something like that. Big boo-boo. You know, you must, independent of the teacher's ugly, handsome, smart, stupid, expresses themselves well, doesn't express themselves well, famous, not famous, you know, has a long biography, doesn't have a long biography, had this person as their teacher, didn't have this person as their teacher, forget it. You have to be able to confirm everything they say by your own understanding. It has to check out with what you know, and it has to make sense to you. Otherwise, don't accept it. So that's not what tetso means. Doubt doesn't mean that. That kind of doubt, that kind of critical mind, that kind of analytical mind is a great virtue. This is not, okay? Because it says, Nyomong Chen. Say Nyomong Chen. Nyomong Chen. Nyomong is that word for mental affliction. It has to be a mental affliction doubt, which means something like continuing to doubt what has been proved to you, continuing to doubt what makes sense in every sense, being lazy and not figuring out whether or not it's true, doubting something in the back of your mind that if you thought about it for 3 minutes, you could say that's true, but you're just lazy, or your culture didn't grow. When you were growing up, your culture didn't say that, so you doubt it. For no better reason than you were born in on certain kinds of dirt called the United States, and for no better reason than that mommy and daddy said it to you when you were a kid, you doubt the opposite. For example, there's absolutely no logical proof that the mind stops when the body dies. There is none. There is no convincing evidence at all, period, that the mind stops when the body dies. There's not. The body, due to its own causes, due to its own nature, broke down. The mind can't express itself with that body anymore because it's broken. It's like a guy sitting in a car. Are you going to say the driver died because the tire went flat? The car's not moving anymore. The driver must have died. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. Just because the machine died doesn't mean that the driver is dead. Maybe the driver can't get the machine to work anymore, so the driver went somewhere else, or something like that. In other words, there ain't no convincing evidence at all that the mind stops when the body dies. There just ain't. But because we grew up with that, you doubt it. You know, you tend to doubt it. Just because the electricity stopped, okay, Buddhism would say that's a function of the machine and not a function of the mind, which is resting on the machine. Okay? The mind obviously has a deep relationship with the machine. Obviously, no one can deny that. And obviously, when the machine is badly damaged, it hurts the mind. When you drink alcohol, the mind gets stupid. There must be a connection between the body and the mind. But there's no convincing evidence that just because the electricity flow of the mind stops, that invisible, untouchable, uncuttable, unmeasurable, unrestricted, my mind could go to the refrigerator in the Geshe house right now. It's not restricted to my skin, forget it. It can go beyond my skin. That ineffable thing disappears when the physical stuff stops. There's no proof for that. That's just an example. So Tetsom is continuing to cling to doubts which you should have figured out a long time ago. But just because you're too lazy, basically. All right. Number 6. Say tawa. Tawa. They translate it as wrong views. Wrong views. Okay, there's 5. Wrong views. I sweated a lot over that translation. Wrong to me means don't do that. That's wrong. It seems like a judgmental thing, and so that in that sense I'm a little nervous about the translation wrong. Maybe say incorrect or inaccurate or something. I'm not too sure about the translation view. This is the Tibetan word for to look at something, but I would say more like worldview. Okay, a mistaken worldview. There are 5 flavors of it. Okay, I would almost prefer to call it a mistaken worldview, which is not judgmental like wrong, and I don't know. It's more broad than saying view, because it is a worldview. It's how you view your world. Okay, and there's 5 flavors. I'll just go over them quickly, and then we'll take a break. Number 1 is called jikta, which is the big troublemaker. It's grasping to you or yours, me or mine, as being self-existent. It's believing that me or mine is self-existent. That's jikta. That's number 1. It's called perishable view because it's focused on something which will perish, which is you, and also because if you apply the right antidotes, you can kill it, and it's perishable. Okay, but I'm not going to get into all that. Number 2 is called tarta. Say tarta. Extreme views. Extreme views. Extreme views is a little tricky. It is a necessary consequence of thinking number 1. Okay? If you believe in number 1, you'll have number 2. To put it very briefly, and we're going to cover this in another class, it's to think like this. If somebody comes up to you in a Buddhism class and says, you have never had a correct perception in your whole existence. Okay? Things aren't the way you thought they were. Okay? And then as a reaction to that, you say, well, then nothing exists at all. And that's an extreme view. This view is called extreme view. What are the 2 extremes? By the way, in the middle is what we call what? Madhyamika. Okay? Professor Thurman's daughter. Uma. Okay? Middle way. The middle way. That's the middle. What are the 2 extremes? Let's say it in plain English. Extreme number 1 is everything's just the way I always thought it was. Everything is just the way I always thought it was. Everything is just the way it seems to me. That's extreme number 1. That's called the extreme of existence. Yata. Everything is just the way I thought it was. And then some Lama comes to a class and says, every perception you ever had is wrong. So you think to yourself, if it ain't the way I thought it was, it must not matter at all. It must not exist at all. That's extreme number 2. If it ain't the way I thought it was, it doesn't exist at all. And oftentimes attached to wrong view number 2 there is, and I can do whatever the hell I want to do. The world is an illusion. Samsara and nirvana are the same. It doesn't matter whether I'm ethical or not. It's all empty anyway. Okay? Okay? Crazy wrong view. Total, absolute, ultimate wrong view. Okay? So those are 2 flavors. Either everything's the way I thought it was, which is called yata, or if it's not that, then nothing matters, or nothing exists at all. And a madhyamika, a Buddhist, has to stay in the middle. between those two. We have to thread the line between those two. That's Madhyamika. That's the meaning of Madhyamika. Okay, number 3. Say Lokta. Lokta means wrong view. Okay, this one is just called view, right? But this is the flavor called wrong view. Wrong view meaning opposite view. Okay, opposite view. And what it means is, you think that things that don't exist do exist, and you think that things that do exist don't exist. And the examples are 2: future lives, past and future lives. Okay. If without any evidence you don't accept them, it's lokta. Okay. If you can't accept them yet because you don't have enough good evidence, that's not lokta. That's good critical Buddhist mind. That's fine. That's great. If you can't accept it yet because you haven't gotten enough proof for it, that's not lokta. If you don't accept it after getting enough proof for it, or if you don't accept it and you really truly believe it cannot exist, only because your mommy and daddy said that or something like that, that's lokta. Lokta is a stupid belief in something, or a stupid belief that something's impossible for no good reason at all. Okay, that's lokta. For example, not believing in past and future lives, assuming there's no past and future lives without thinking about it. Okay, that's lokta. Second example would be to believe that enlightenment itself is not possible, for example, or that seeing emptiness directly is not possible. Something like that's a pretty classic lokta. It doesn't mean you shouldn't doubt or be critical. Okay, we talked about that. And Maitreya has a beautiful line in a scripture where he says, if it don't sound right yet, just shelve it, okay? But don't reject it. If you reject it, you collect very, very bad karma. Because it does exist. So just shelve it for now. Put it in a category of things that I'll check on those later. I can't accept those things yet. And I think every American Buddhist has a certain number of those. There's a certain number of things that they say in the teachings that, well, I just can't buy that yet. The important thing is don't reject it. Don't say it's stupid or something like that. Say, I can't buy that yet. Maitreya said, just put it on the shelf. I'll keep it over here until some guy shows up and explains it to me in a way that I can accept. Lokta or shelving it? He says, Tangyong Sushat. Tangyong Sushat means to leave it in equanimity. Okay? But don't reject it. Pongwa Mache means don't reject it. Okay? Number 4 is Tawa Chongzin. Say Tawa Chongzin. It is thinking that your other wrong views are perfect. Holding on to your other wrong views and saying, my views are correct. All my world views are just right. Okay. Tawa Chongzin. Holding your own views to be perfectly correct. Number 5 is Tsutum Dan Tushik Chongzin Ge Tawa. That's a long one. What it means is to believe in certain spiritual practices which are harmful, and particularly harmful to you. For example, any kind of spiritual practice that would hurt your body. Okay. Like whipping yourself or not eating for 6 days and hurting yourself. Or I've even seen Buddhists who insisted on doing certain prostrations until their legs were hurt and until they're actually handicapped. That's not Buddhism. Okay? That's not a good practice. That's a wasting of precious opportunity. Don't do spiritual practices which hurt you. Okay. This also includes like very wrong views about what is the right thing to do. For example, in India, at a certain point, there was a teacher who said, free sex, sex is like a flower by the roadside, and everyone should just go and pick it, and he said that. And that would be Tsutum Tushik Chongzin Ge Tawa. That would be a wrong view. To say that, don't be hung up. Everything's all right, just love each other, and physically too, and other people's wives, and other people's husbands, and it's just a joy. You know, that would be a classical wrong view. Let your anger out. Express your anger. Don't bottle it up. You know, yell at your boss back. You know, there is a virtue to resolving something by bringing it out in the open. That's not what I'm talking about. But to say that it's a virtue or that it's beneficial to harm somebody back because they hurt you, an eye for an eye is total wrong view. Classical wrong view number 5. Okay. Last thing to say before the break. I keep saying that, right? What are the 3 spheres in the act of that prediction? We're getting back to the prediction. Because that young man reached a point where he stopped these 6 totally, permanently, forever, then the Buddha came up to him and said, hey, cool, you are going to be Shakyamuni Buddha on such and such a planet in such and such a year. Now I can tell you that. I can predict it. There's a predictor who's Dipamkara Buddha, okay, the Marmenze. There's a Buddha who's predicting that this guy is going to become Shakyamuni. There's the Buddhahood which he is predicting. There's a boy who's being predicted too. And there's an emptiness of each one of those 3. And the Buddha would never do such a prediction without seeing that emptiness at that moment. Okay? And that's why it comes up in the DiamondCutterSutra here. The Buddha says to Subhuti, when that Buddha came up to me and put his hand on my head and said, hey, great job, you removed your mental afflictions permanently. Now you're going to be called Shakyamuni Buddha. After so and so many years, you'll reach enlightenment. But at that moment, that Buddha wasn't thinking of me as self-existent. And that Buddha wasn't thinking of himself as self-existent. And that Buddha didn't see the whole prediction as being self-existent. Okay. If he had, he wouldn't have been a Buddha and there wouldn't have been any prediction. A prediction which is self-existent cannot exist. It's a gotcha. There was something going on. There was some emptiness going on at that moment. Or there could not have been a prediction. There was 3 emptinesses going on at that moment. Or there couldn't have been a prediction. Okay. We're going to talk about those 3 emptinesses after the break, so have a nice break. said you can overcome the four sufferings. You don't have to die anymore. You don't have to get old anymore. You don't have to get sick. He didn't say you don't have to have blow-ups like you used to. You can just have minor irritations. He didn't say that. He promised something much more extreme. Much more extreme. You don't have to get old like you used to. You don't have to die like you used to. You don't have to get sick like you used to. That was what I was interested in. So it seemed to me you were either getting too extreme. Some people get up and talk about how not to get mad at the boss by thinking of him in certain ways. Or else they were talking about this very, very technical emptiness thing that I couldn't see any logical application to my life. From what they seemed like, from what they were saying, I'd have to go into meditation all the time and somehow see some kind of blankness or voidness, and then I wouldn't get mad at anybody because they wouldn't be there anymore, or something like that. They seem to be very opposite, or they seem to be very disconnected. And at this point in the DiamondCutterSutra, the Buddha addresses that question. Don't forget, Buddhas are omniscient. They're very sneaky. They can speak a sutra 2,500 years ago, knowing that we will be sitting here wondering, what the hell has this got to do with my life? It's not at all difficult for them to plan this sort of thing. For them, planning 2,500 years from now in Vajrapani is no more difficult than planning what they're going to do when they get up out of the meditation. For them, it's exactly the same distance, because they're omniscient. So they planned for us, and they said, these guys are going to wonder, what the heck this got to do with their life? And the next part of the sutra is talking about a great Buddhist saint who lived in the land of the king of Kalinka. Not that Kalinkarna again. Kalinka. And the story goes like this. This Buddhist saint who had perceived emptiness directly is sitting in the forest meditating. And the king's wife happens along with her ladies-in-waiting. And she sees the saint. She has a lot of faith and a lot of devotion. So she approaches the saint. I believe his name was Suprama. I'm not sure. I'm trying to confirm it. But that means patient one. Okay? And she says, I have some questions to ask you about Buddhism. And she starts to ask me questions. And the ladies-in-waiting are kind of wandering around. And she's sitting next to this saint talking about Buddhism, asking him questions. And the king happens to go out for a ride. He's riding along on a hunt or something. He's riding along, and he comes into this clearing. There's his wife, this Buddhist yogi, and he gets angry. He assumes there's been some fooling around going on. So he has all his other bodyguard with him, and he says, okay, you guys get down off your horses and tie this guy down to the ground. So they spread eagle him on the ground, this Buddhist saint. And then he gets a knife and he says, and he starts to slowly cut off the saint's fingers, and then his hands and his toes and his feet. He just slowly amputates each part of his body, very slowly. I believe this might have been the former life of the Buddha. Check the sutra, okay? He's probably speaking from personal experience. In fact, he is, as I remember. He was that saint. And so he's speaking from what really happened. And then the Buddha says to Subhuti, by the way, I didn't get angry at all. I didn't get upset at all. While they were cutting off my fingers, he did not get upset. Did he feel pain? He did feel pain. It did hurt. And he says that. He says it hurt. He says that I did not get upset, and I did not hate the king. I did not feel like, notice that we talked about before. I did not feel any kind of hatred towards the king. It didn't occur in my mind in the least that I should try to hurt this king bad, or I should try to get back at this king, or I should try to do anything to this king. Because it did not even occur to me. And in the next line he says, because I didn't see anything about that situation that was selfish. And then in the next line he says, if I had seen anything as self-existent while he was cutting off my fingers and so on, I would have cut it. So there's the whole spiel right there. It's very cool. All the clue is there. What's it got to do with your life? How's it going to help you with the balls in your face? The guy boss is in my face. The woman boss is his wife. Is pushing my buttons. I call them button pusher and face in my face, you know. And she doesn't get in my face, but she does other things. Somehow, you know, sometimes I think they're chucking some bar in his life. But they know exactly what to do to get me upset. Especially after I'll go back after teaching this class. And by 10 o'clock they'll do it. And what is it to perceive the emptiness of that situation? And it goes back to what we said before. If you're having a mental affliction, what's the litmus test of having a mental affliction? How do you know you're in the midst of a mental affliction? Peace of mind is upset. Somehow. Irritated, nervous, stressed, angry, any kind of lack of contentment, peace of mind, a mental affliction is operating. It cannot be operating if you're perceiving the emptiness of the situation clearly, it says. Does it have to be direct? Almost couldn't be direct, okay, or else we wouldn't get paid for that hour. You can't pick up a dime and pay that hour. You can't have any normal perception. So it doesn't mean that. It means while the saint is having his fingers cut off by the king, he's looked at the situation. And it's the same as the screaming boss. It's just a little more painful, okay? What was going on? Why didn't he react? Why didn't he respond to violence with violence?
It would be perpetuating karma, you see.
He would be just perpetuating it. Okay? If you want to meet another king who comes and cuts your fingers off, then do violence back to him. And you'll guarantee that you will meet another king who will come and cut your fingers off. That's where he came from in the first place. You're getting your fingers cut off not because you were sitting there close to his wife. You're getting your fingers cut off because you cut off somebody else's fingers. For them. If you want to have this thing happen again, if you want to perpetuate it, what is the word for samsara in Tibet? Kodwa. Kodwa means circle. It means what do they call it? There's a word in English. Vicious circle. Vicious circle. That's samsara. The word samsara means vicious circle. Vicious circle in English means what? The Israelis do violence to the Arabs. The Arabs, because their son was killed, have to kill one of the Israelis. So one of the Israelis has to say, well, one of my sons, I got to kill two Arabs. And then they say, well, I just got to swear that I have to kill his father. You know? And then this vicious circle will never end. Because each event is perpetuating the next event. And here's the trick, here's the rub, here's the point of the class. The natural reaction to someone hurting you is to hurt them back. That is also the precise karmic cause to make them come back and hurt you again. And that's why samsara is a vicious circle. So break it. How do you break it? Just don't react. And now somebody comes up and says, hey, just don't react when someone punches you in the head. turn the other cheek. Let them punch you on the other side of your face. I mean, I grew up, it wasn't until like 25 that I understood what turn the other cheek means. It means if they punch you on this side of your head, go up to them and say, would you like to punch me on the other side of my head? Okay, what it means is don't react, but don't react because you understand what's going on. If you just, someone comes up and teaches you don't react, you'll never be able to implement it. You know that. You know it's wrong to yell back at somebody. You know it's wrong to do violence to somebody. But because you don't have an understanding of emptiness, you can't do it. If you do have an understanding of emptiness, you will be able to do it. And it's the only thing that will allow you not to do it. That's the perfection of wisdom. That's how the perfection of wisdom comes. You just know that because the thing is empty, it's happening to you because you did it to someone before. And the last thing in the world you want to do is to make it go on in a vicious circle. So with knowledge, because of your knowledge, you don't respond with violence. Now, in the same breath, and then I'll take some questions, I have to say, I'm talking about violence with anger. I'm talking about violence motivated by a mental affliction. I'm not talking about forceful action on the part of a Buddhist. I didn't say a Buddhist can't take forceful action. If that boss or anyone else is harming another person and you have the capacity to stop it, you must act. Your Bodhisattva vows require it. Even forceful action. Your Bodhisattva vows require it. You are required to take even very forceful action to help another person. And in a very limited way, you are even required to do violence to a person if the situation calls for it. You are allowed to break 6 of the first 7 bad things. What are they? If you're a monk, okay? If you're a layman, you can break all 7. Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, slander, hard talk, add it all. You're allowed to do all 7. It would be of extraordinary benefit to another person. And by the way, if you've been a bodhisattva for millions of years, really. So we don't really have to worry about that. But in theory, okay, in theory, I repeat, you could be required to undertake a very violent action against someone if it was the only way to prevent us hurting others and themselves. What about the last 3 non-virtues? Never ever, as my Lama would say. His English is very idiomatic. He learns most of his English from TV commercials. So, never ever. You can't break the last 2. The mental non-virtues never can be of any use to anybody. They can never be applied in a situation, in an extraordinary situation to aid somebody. Forget it. So what it means is, although you may be required to fight back to the boss if he's hurting someone, you can never hate him. You can never do it with the slightest bit of anger. I always tell people, if your heart's getting faster, forget it. Just shut up. You ain't ready yet. The best thing to do is to just shut up. Don't respond. Your heart starts going ding, 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 and your hands are getting sweaty. And it's very common for certain people at that point to say, oh yeah, in that Buddhism class it said, you've got to respond forcefully if someone's in danger. So it's okay if I yell right now, because you want to yell. Not because you have any kind of compassion going on. You just feel like it. So you twist Buddhism to fit your own desires, which is very common. So what I mean to say is, the reason I got into that was, Buddhism doesn't say you have to sit there and be wimpy. Never said that. Don't respond with a mental affliction. If you're responding with a mental affliction, you're perpetuating your own vicious cycle. And if you want it to go on, if you want to meet that unpleasant object again, then let your natural reactions come out. Because that's exactly the one that got him there in the first place. There was one more point on the homework, and then I'll take a few questions. So, by the way, if on the homework it says, why didn't that saint respond to the king? Why didn't he try to get the king down? He did not want to perpetuate the vicious cycle. So what's happening to this arhat? This guy who, because of his understanding of emptiness, and because he saw all those things the moment after he came out of the direct perception of emptiness, he has finally been able, through the process we just described. I mean, if you sit there and let people touch your fingers off and don't get mad, then probably you're not going to get very mad again. And sooner or later you'll be able to overcome anger and stuff. You will never get mad again. So here you have this guy called an arhat. He has reached a state called nirvana, which is permanent destruction of his own mental afflictions because of his understanding of emptiness. But because if you keep up acting like this over a period of time, you're not going to have these mental afflictions. Those 6 are going to have to move out of your house. What's the emptiness of that arhat experiencing his own mind empty of mental afflictions? You tell me. Anybody. What's the dependent origination of an arhat's mind? It's also a projection. It's also a projection. He is being forced by his karmic seeds to see what? His own mind as being totally pure of mental affliction. It's cool. It's very interesting. Of course his mind is dependently originated. Of course it's another projection. It's just one more projection. It's one more object. He is being forced by his past deeds to perceive his own mind as never again having a mental. And that's the only way you can get your mind to be like that. What did you think? Someone was going to operate? You know? I mean, they were going to identify the synapses that relate to anger and cut them out of your mind? Or, you know, what did you think was going to happen? How did you think you were going to get to be an arhat? It's just another shifting of your own projection. Nothing external is happening. It's not like someone's coming and extracting mental afflictions from your head. It's not like that. You are being forced, and it's like everything else in the world. It's like every other change that can ever occur in the world. It is dependently original. You are being forced by your own karma to see an otherwise blank mind as not having any more mental afflictions. One more projection. It's being forced on you by your past deeds. The mind of an Arya, like every other mind and like every other object in the universe, is blank. It's the glass of liquid on the table between the 3 beings. And he in particular is being forced to see his mind as totally clean and permanently clean. Why? His own past deeds, his own past thoughts and words and deeds. So it's cool. Even the mind of an Arya, a mind which is totally free of all bad thoughts again, ever again. You can't wait too. Something in the future that will never happen is a projection. It's the result of the same process. And by the way, it could never have been any other way. There ain't no other way. If it were any other way, it would be Gata. Any other kind of Arya's mind don't exist anyway. It could never exist.